Antipodes are points diametrically opposite, like Australia and New Zealand, to continents in the northern hemisphere. Visiting Antipodes is our troupe of veteran globetrotters. Sydney is the big-ticket destination where Australians show off their sophistication and self-confidence. The weather in Sydney changes literally every 10 minutes. Don't be surprised if we have photos of the same place with different skies. The 10 minutes were up. It is said that Sydney is located in the most picturesque harbour in the world. Here are two Sydney's iconic landmarks, Harbour Bridge and Opera House. The dusk is falling upon this beautiful city, and we are all decked out and heading to the Opera House for a concert of famous arias sung by Australia's opera stars. And after the concert, Sydney by night. We are setting out to explore the city by water, starting from the Circular Quay, where ferries come and go carrying people to the most distant corners of this gigantic harbor. We are leaving behind downtown Sydney, the waterside precinct renowned for its vast array of tourist attractions, restaurants, and its remarkable modern skyline. The plan is to explore Darling Harbour. To reach our destination, we make our way under the Harbour Bridge, affectionately nicknamed by locals the Coat Hanger. Opened in 1932, the majestic structure spans the harbour at the narrowest point. Until 1988, this waterfront part of Sydney was just a commercial dockland. Tourist-driven development transformed the area into a hub of high-profile attractions, restaurants and casinos. Sydney Maritime Museum, Aquarium and Wildlife Park are all located here. As you can imagine, residential real estate market in Darling Harbour is booming. Since our interest in Australian real estate is fleeting, we set out to further explore Sydney Harbour. Again, we board the ferry, which takes us all the way to the harbour entrance, the North Head. This is harbour's northern gate post. Beyond lies the Pacific Ocean. The coastline here is rocky, steep, forbidding, and also very windy. The community of Manly occupies the narrow isthmus between the ocean and the Sydney Harbour. It is a resort town known for its waterside properties, yacht marina, and the 2 golden kilometers of the Manly Beach. The waves that break on these golden sands are made of surfers' dreams. Every year, in February and March, Australian Surfing Open is held on this very beach. We follow the trail that starts where the beach ends. It runs at the edge of the water. Around the bend, we enter a small, peaceful lagoon called Cabbage Tree Cove, which is really referring to a species of a palm tree. Back in town, Zosia is leading a search for a seafood restaurant. She says the local fish with international reputation for good taste is called miradori, preferably grilled. Abutting the southern pylon of the harbour bridge is the site of the first European settlement in Australia, the Rocks. It is, of course, unrecognizable from the squalid place it once was. Imagine the company of ex-convicts, sailors and whalers boozing and brawling in harbourside drinking dives, brothels and opium dens. Yes, the Rocks have been transformed into the old world tourist trap, with millions of restaurants, bars, shops and an outdoor souvenir market. Again, tourist-driven redevelopment has saved many historical buildings and interesting locations. As if the shopping at the Rocks wasn't enough, this trio of tourists set out to experience one of the most traditional, exclusive department stores in Sydney, the Queen Victoria Building. Beginning with the town hall, the architecture of Midtown Sydney is full of contrast of old and new. Neoclassical, Victorian and Art Deco buildings are dwarfed by glass, steel and concrete of modern construction. These skyscrapers tower over the Gothic Revival Cathedral of St. Mary, large, solid Catholic church built in 1868. The interior lighting fills the space with warm, diffused golden glow, illuminating part of the vault which would normally remain dark in a Gothic church. The chancel stained glass window depicting the downfall of humanity and 3 rose windows above entrances were completed in the 19th century and are considered masterpieces of design and workmanship. Outside, midway on a western flank of the massive building, a small but dynamic statue of John Paul II graces the niche between buttresses. Art Gallery Road runs north from the cathedral to the Royal Botanic Garden. Enter through the Woolloomooloo Gate. Woolloomooloo? What sort of a word is that? Is someone kidding me? And this is the actual Woolloomooloo Gate. The garden opened in 1816 and is the oldest scientific institution in Australia. It covers the area of 30 hectares and consists of many specialized sections, like the Rose Garden, Succulent Garden, Oriental Garden, Rainforest Walk, Herb Garden, and Palm Grove, to name a few. Sydney dwellers take their city's green spaces very seriously and make use of them whenever they can, on weekends as well as during the week. Early morning visitors can count on the company of small and large birds. White Australian ibis is normally a waterfowl stately stepping high on its long legs, its long curved bill seeking out crayfish or mussels in the muddy bottom. But due to environmental pressures, ibis became the city bird. In 2014, the first ibis census was conducted in Sydney. Almost 9,000 birds were counted. Australians have a complicated relationship with the ibis. On one hand, it is an Australian icon. On the other hand, a butt of jokes and an object of revulsion. So, how do you feel about the ibis? Some rich Sydneysiders don't want to be bothered with ibis or fellow human beings in a public park. They are willing to pay a pretty penny for nature to come to them. In search of Aboriginal art, we made our way to the Art Gallery of the New South Wales. A neoclassical building housing European art collection is a pretty common phenomenon. But where is the native art? We didn't want to linger in this section for too long, just long enough to check. What do they actually have down under? Well, down under, on the underground level 3, they do have some Aboriginal art. Fact number 1 about Aboriginal art. It is the only continuously practiced unbroken art tradition in the world. Fact 2. Earliest artifacts are rock paintings some 28,000 years old found in northern Australia. Also very sophisticated, almost abstract rock engravings. Which contemporary Aboriginal artists help to decipher and explain? Other media common for centuries among native artists are three-dimensional wood carvings. And bark engravings. Here are contemporary wood carvings of sleeping bats. From rock painting called Pepunia art, bark painting and body painting, Aboriginal artists moved on to paper, cloth and canvas. From traditional colors of yellow, brown, red and white to much more varied palette. The traditional subject matter were map-like aerial landscapes. Also animals, lakes, and dream time, which is the domain of spirits and symbols that populate indigenous legends and stories. This painting technique is called dot painting, effect achieved by dipping bamboo sticks of varied thickness in paint and applying to wood, paper, or canvas. Didgeridoo, or a drone pipe, is a wind instrument used by Aboriginal people for at least 1500 years. It is made of eucalyptus wood fitted with beeswax mouthpiece. In the streets of Sydney, we came across several masters of the instrument. Here, for your enjoyment, is a sound sample. Some ethnomusicologists call it a symphony of cow farts. Blue Mountains are a sandstone plateau rising over 1,000 meters high. The name comes from the slate blue mist that hangs over the finely chiseled sandstone formations and deep, inaccessible valleys. It is a mist of fragrant oils exuded by a dense canopy of eucalyptus trees. Once upon a time, two Aboriginal tribes, Darung and Gundungura nations, presided over this magical and mysterious land. Many characteristic land features and rock formations, like Katoomba Falls or Three Sister Rocks, have been immortalized in tribal Dreamtime stories. Katoomba Falls begin their segmented descent 1,000 meters above the bottom of Jameson Valley. For millennia, the valley was inaccessible and isolated, so that some species of plants growing on the valley floor date back to the Jurassic forests. Thriving in this unique environment are giant tree ferns, gum trees, lily-pilly trees, and even sassafras, known for its stimulating and hallucinogenic properties. At this point, we are all ready for some sassafras beer. The beer was quite potent, and we now share not only dreams but also hallucinations. Cairns is a resort on a northeastern Australian coast. This section of Pacific is called the Coral Sea. We cross the Tropic of Capricorn and land only 17 degrees south of the equator. From our hotel windows, the views of clouds over the Cairns Lagoon and the city are stunning. We set out for an afternoon walk along the magnificent esplanade running at the edge of the lagoon under gigantic palms, magnolias, and ficus trees. Cairns, being the tourist mecca, is awash with bars, nightclubs, restaurants, cafes, and eateries. Almost all serve local seafood, which includes this creature called sea bug, related to shrimp, fish called barramundi, and other ocean delights. Accompanied with excellent Australian wines, of course. Cairns is a getaway to the Great Barrier Reef, and Vitek is inviting us to explore. First, it seemed we chose the worst day to be out at sea. These bodysuits are to protect us from stinging jellyfish when we snorkel over the reef. All are anxious if we have the right size and if we'll be able to force our bodies inside the suits. And here's Zosha. All fits well, but the sleeves. Aren't we an elegant couple? Warm Pacific swallows us all, and we forget all in the underwater paradise, snorkeling on a rainy day. We explore two sections of the Great Barrier Reef, Saxon Reef and Hastings Reef. Our coordinates are 16 degrees 24 minutes south and 145 degrees 52 minutes east. Psychedelic Meadow stretches as far as the eye can see. Enormous mushrooms, blue, purple, pink, and green, grow here in abundance. Strange creatures of wild shapes and colors are peacefully grazing among them. These are the sexy lips of the giant clam. For a long time, we are happily lost in a liquid space. North of Cairns, Captain Cook's Highway is hugging the coastline. We follow the road to Port Douglas. Humidity and the lush vegetation remind us where we are. These are the tropics. At the entrance to the beach, a warning sign, and in the box below, a bottle of vinegar to wash the burn if you get stung. Aussies do not give in so easily to the jellyfish. Part of the beach is cordoned off with floating fine net, and you can safely swim in this enclosure. You can also see Zosha and I cautiously wading in. At this time of year, the water is about 86 degrees. How long can you swim in a soap? And then you need to peel off your wet bathing suit. The hamlet of Port Douglas lies at the foot of hills densely covered by rainforest. Mossman River rushes through Kukuyalani lands, the jungle-covered mountains, cutting a deep ravine in the sides of neighboring hills. We are going for a 3-mile hike and will cross the river gorge on a suspension bridge. The water is so clear you can actually see the fish. We are coming close to the suspension bridge. What fun! In the rainforest next to the river, the air is dense with humidity and mosquitoes are fierce. But everywhere you turn, the sights are curious and fascinating, so you don't mind being chewed to a pulp. Nature's handiwork is sometimes peculiar, yet how beautiful. Australia consists of the continental landmass and thousands of islands around it. The largest of them is Tasmania, a triangle broken off the southern tip of the continent. Our ship leaves the safety of Sydney Harbour and heads south towards the Tasman Sea. We'll sail along Tasmania's eastern coast all the way south to the Storm Bay. We are to drop anchor at one of the oldest British settlements on the island, the penal colony of Port Arthur. 98-acre colony was established as timber harvesting camp using convict labor. By 1840, more than 2,000 convicts, soldiers, and civil administrators lived at Port Arthur. Here were prison's kitchen and laundry. Over time, the prison complex had become a major industrial settlement with a hospital and a church. Convicts were producing a variety of goods such as bricks, furniture, clothing, boats, and ships, all for export from this wharf. Trying a prison cell out for size, and then savoring freedom and enlightenment in the shell of an old church. In stark contrast to the inmates, Port Arthur's community of administrators and their families lived in relative luxury. They entertained themselves with parties, regattas, and literary evenings. In 1877, the penal settlement was finally closed. The remaining buildings became an institution for the aged and mentally ill. By 1920, tourists began to arrive to see the remnants of the infamous prison. The township of Richmond is but a few minutes bus ride from Port Arthur. In town, there is a bridge built by the prison inmates. It is the oldest bridge in Australia still in use. Next to the bridge, nestled atop a modest hill, is St. John's the Evangelist Roman Catholic Church, also the oldest functioning church in Australia, built in 1836. At the entrance, the flagstone is deeply worn, just like the thresholds of old European cathedrals. Hobart is the capital of Tasmania. The city of 220,000 is beautifully located where River Derwent widens and runs into the Storm Bay, which in turn opens into the South Pacific. The city's spectacular backdrop is Mount Wellington, over 1,000 meters high. It offers sweeping views of the area, also many hiking and cycling trails. Morning was bright and crisp, with the temperature at 7 degrees Celsius. We tried the viewing platform, but then decided in favor of the enclosed lookout station. Back in town, we paid a visit to a fashionable Salamanca place, where old sandstone warehouses were refurbished and now host galleries, cafes, fancy souvenir shops, and fresh seafood restaurants. Hobart has many attractive spots. Some are modern, like the fountain by the Salamanca Place or the building of the Hobart City Council. And some are historical landmarks, like the shady Franklin Square presided over by the statue of Sir John Franklin, Arctic explorer and governor of Tasmania. Or take this old post office building, which remembers the times of Queen Victoria. North of Hobart, overlooking the Derwent River, Bunurong Wildlife Sanctuary is a shelter for orphaned, sick, or injured wild animals. We will first take a look at iconic koala bears, which are not bears and aren't even related to bears. Koalas are not exactly thrilled with their visitors. Since they are nocturnal animals, they would much rather sleep through the day than nurse a hangover in the evening. Yes, they need their Z's because they live perpetually drunk on the eucalyptus oils, which they consume with eucalyptus leaves, their only food. Nevertheless, cameras are furiously clicking. They are just too cute for their own good. This is how much they care about being a celebrity. Kangaroos, on the other hand, enjoy their celebrity status and insist on getting their rays while being photographed. In the wild, they graze on grasses and bush tips, but also like to be fed alfalfa, oats, grains, and fruits. As far as petting, they prefer to be scratched on the chest. Kangaroos are the only large mammals to use hopping as means of locomotion. Some kangaroo species can move at speeds of 80 kilometers per hour. Their long, strong tails help them keep balance while slowly moving forward or grazing. Kangaroos come in all shapes and sizes. Red Roo here is over 5 feet tall and weighs about 200 pounds. And these cute wallabies are the size of kittens. Like koalas, kangaroos belong to the family of marsupials, that is, animals that carry their young in a pouch. Because of the continent's isolation, evolution of mammals and other species in Australia took totally different course. Only here you can find this little cutie called baby-faced assassin, which is a relative of the infamous Tasmanian devil. Talking about the devil. Ladies and gentlemen, what a letdown. This is it, the devil himself. Locals say they travel in packs and are fierce hunters, also sound terrifying while howling at night. But for those of you who remember the cartoon, it sure looks like Bugs Bunny gave him a bad rap. Meet another cuddly Australian native called Wombat, also a marsupial. Mature individual is about the size of a spaniel. They are herbivores, adaptable to many habitats. Basically nocturnal, they may venture out to feed on cool, overcast days. Their distinctive characteristic? Cubic poop, ladies and gentlemen. And here is Echidna, also known as spiny anteater, belongs to the family of egg-laying mammals. Their diet consists of ants and termites, which Echidna can smell even underground. Two of the three largest birds on this planet are natives of Australia. Emu is a soft-feathered, flightless bird which appears on Australian coins. And cassowary, also flightless, emu's smaller cousin. Cassowary lays beautiful, bright green eggs. Smaller birds of Australia are so colorful you can't stop your camera clicking. Here is a speckled goose, white cockatoo, and pink, and laughing kookaburra, satin bowerbird, currawong, and finally a sleeping parrot. As a continent, Australia is home to the largest number of snake species in the world. There are cobras, pythons, tiger snakes, copperheads, big sea snakes, and hundreds of others. They are terrifying and at the same time beautiful. Meet Serhis from the back, now from the front. There is also a dizzying variety of lizards. And one giant Australian lizard that has a worldwide reputation. As I said, because of the continent's remoteness and isolation, Aussies also evolved differently. First of all, they eat Vegemite, a substance that is a cross between sweetened shoe polish and automotive lubricant. Their road signs remind you of your trips to the zoo, or the myth of transfiguration. When they drink beer, they're getting on the piss. And then they postpone going until they're in distress. But like everyone else, they don't think much of their government. While in transit, we were celebrating Danusha's birthday with the help of ship's crew. And every night we were celebrating being together and together discovering the world down under.